Welcome to Sollu Kaburz podcast, and today we are going to bitch a lot about big tech and social media, mostly social media on this episode. This is a podcast, and this is a topic that I wanted to talk about on this podcast for a long time, and this obviously deserves such a huge topic, deserves multiple episodes. Let me see how much I can do justice to this topic in this particular episode. To help me with that is a very, very renowned technology journalist, Mr. Abhishek Baxi, of whom I've been a massive fan. He writes for a lot of publications, but for the sake of clickbait, I'm just going to drop you some names. He's written for Forbes, he's written for Gizmodo, TechRadar, Mint. You've also written columns for Hindustan Times, and now you're a senior editor at Neowin, if I'm not wrong. And you also have a PodcastHub website where you cultivate podcasts. The String with Bakshi is your upcoming podcast, which is in works, I guess. Sir, what a massive fan moment. I mean, first time I came across your work was when my friend suggested me, because he's kind of a tech geek, and that is how I bumped into your work, and massively enjoy reading, especially on the social media. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, Najeeb. Thanks for having me and such a flattering introduction. I don't think I'm sure you've read some of my work, but I don't think I deserve that much of a praise or an introduction to get me into it. But happy to be here. Let's get started.
Pleasure having you. Before I get started, the thing I said about bitching about social media, right? So the thing is, how do I justify this bitching, right? So because I'm going to use social media to promote this podcast, I'm going to share it on Facebook, on Twitter, Instagram, wherever it is. The most basic question is, if you don't like it, don't use it. But that's not exactly the case, right? It's like, for me, it's like after a point, social media becomes a utility, public utility kind of thing. And if I'm having frequent power cuts, I'm going to bitch about the electricity board, right? It's not like, why don't you get someone else's electricity? That's not the option, right? So am I right in that? Are we wrong in that? Is it justifiable?
No, no, absolutely. And I've been in the same boat, the same confusion or conundrum, perhaps. The reason is for a lot of my work, I publish my articles and then I promote them on social media.
Sure.
I've gotten a lot of writing gigs because people have seen my work or my opinion on social media, particularly Twitter, but anywhere else. There are people who built their careers on social media, and so many of the platforms that there are now. But like you mentioned, these are just platforms. So I also rant about them a lot. And as a service provider, I think that's a right I have now, because I'm contributing to their success, and I'm not saying this with any sense of entitlement. I'm of course a 0.0001% of the user of any of the popular platforms, but as a service provider, as a platform provider, it is my right and it is my entitlement to deserve privacy, to deserve things that make the platform a safe space, to and of course there are things like no unlawful activities, and bar any kind of illegalities. So all those things have to be taken care of. So when those things, when that doesn't happen, when those things are create a problem for me and my presence on social media, I think I have a fair right to rant about that.
People seem to ignore the fact about how big the social media and tech is in today's times, right? So there was a time when oil was the big big industry, and the players of oil industry were the players of the world. And there was a time when banking was the same, and so on, right? Now it's the tech moguls all over the world who are like the top 10, top 15 in the Forbes, right? The entire population of China and India is on Facebook, like as much as 2.5 billion users, right, on Facebook. It's almost like 20% of the world is on Facebook. That's how massive Facebook is, and the data of all those users and the power it has to influence through the information that it spreads. And what other examples you can give in order to quantify how big tech has become and its influence that people seem to ignore?
Uh, See, the fact that tech is interspersed with our lives these days is a very small point to make.
Sure.
We've seen how, and you mentioned some of the companies and some of the tech moguls. We've seen how big these businesses have become. Even a big player in the oil, because you took that example, like Reliance, would now
Hmm.
want to move to tech because that is where the money is, that is where the growth opportunity is. Oil and of course any kind of fuel has a finite potential, but
Sure.
tech is the next big thing, if I can still call it the next big thing. But for Reliance it is, as they move to a platform game, they do a lot of acquisitions, they develop a lot of products, they enter the telecom market, and they do a lot of things because that is where the world is. You mentioned China and India. There are services like a Tencent in China or a Paytm in India that are only available in their countries. Paytm is only available in India, and still the Paytm founder and owner Vijay Shekhar Sharma is a billionaire. So
Yeah.
that is the huge potential. So imagine the services that are used globally, like a Google, like a
Yeah.
Facebook or Amazon, and even some of the smaller players, like even a Zomato, for example. And I call them a smaller player because the big tech is far bigger than that.
Sure.
So even the players who are restricted in geography or serve only a niche are huge because of the services they offer, because of the data that they have on us, and because of just our lives being intertwined with the tech, with digital tools, mobile apps, and services that we use on a daily basis. From
Sure.
personal use cases to citizen activities to governance, and of course the professional layer or that goes all across it.
Yeah.
There is not any segment of life that is untouched by tech, and we've been talking about this for at least for last 2 decades,
Yeah.
as tech adoption grew even in countries like India and some other emerging countries. So that fact is a given. That tech is everywhere is a given now. But the power of data and the power of we generating a lot of data and consuming a lot of services is now gone beyond anything that we would have imagined.
Yeah. Was it like inevitable in a capitalist world, tech will do anything that profits it, right? Ultimately. So, for example, if those profits bring good to the people, we applaud them. If they don't bring good to the people, we kind of bash on them. Like, for example, Facebook kind of springboarded the Arab Revolution, right? Back in the day in 2011, when people coordinated
Right.
on Facebook to, fight for the democracy. But the same Facebook is giving platform to right wing groups like white supremacy groups, right wing groups in India, for example. That is inevitable, right? Or was there something that could have been done better by these companies?
Could have been done better, yes. But to expect morality in capitalism is a tricky way we want to go forward.
Sure.
There has to be enough regulation. There has to be enough transparency to keep a check on capitalist tech companies. But I'm even though I am a fan of some of these tech companies, I use a lot of products of certain tech companies. I consume their uh, products and apps and services and whatever they do, but I'm not expecting morality out of them. So I
Sure.
guess that one we can throw out of the window. uh, what happened with a lot of tech bets in the 90s and the noughties was and we've seen a lot of companies who've not done well and a lot of companies who've grown to what they are now, like an Apple or a Google.
Hmm.
So a lot of companies took bets in certain areas. Whether it was an e-commerce player like Amazon going for cloud computing and then
Hmm.
making Amazon Web Services, which is a huge business, and they are market leaders of that. Whether it was Google from search to a lot of consumer search and advertising to a lot of consumer apps and services, which are now default for a lot of people,
Hmm.
including then their work with Android, which is the largest smartphone platform right now.
Hmm.
And Apple took it bets with various form factors of devices. They were an operating system and a MacBook maker, but they took a bet on smartphones, then
Sure.
iPads and things like that, and then online services. But there are also Nokia whose bet failed. There's also
Hmm.
IBM whose bet failed. There's also Oracle whose bet failed. So of course, the big tech right now, we see a lot of consumer interest, and because that is where the data is, that is where the money is. But we've seen a lot of tech players also take wrong bets.
Hmm.
So the ones whose bet worked are the ones that were working on something consumer related,
Sure.
and that gave them a lot of data. And as the internet adoption grew all over the world, a decade later, even in India, we see a lot of consumers hop onto it.
Hmm.
Otherwise, this was limited to enterprises and professional circles.
Hmm.
But when every man on the planet is online, the scope of what you can have is way more than what you can have in with a desktop sitting in an office desk.
Sure.
So with that scope, with that breadth of users, uh, the growth of this big tech was exponential, so to say.
Mm.
And with that, they started, because most of these companies incidentally are in US, where there's a lot of
Yeah.
lobbying to get
Mm.
policy there. I mean, all that happens in India also, but we don't have formal lobbying processes. We do have a lot of underhand tactics in place, but there was a lot of even with monopolies and everything, there was a lot of lobbying to get things done their way.
Mm.
uh, and when a lot of consumer activity started happening in this space, these big tech players had the world at their command. They were almost like monarchies, so to say. So if you've signed up as a subscriber of one of the services, you play by their rules. They can shut down your access any day. They will tell you what to put on the service, what you cannot put on the service. It's almost like a monarchical setup in the 1600s and the 1700s.
The word you bought, right? Shutdown. Just as an example of how the tech can literally deplatform you and rob you from all your power and voice. For example, how did you
Correct.
feel about Trump's suspension on Twitter, right? Because when that happened, I was kind of in two minds, right? First, I was
Yeah.
happy, obviously, because he was off, because he was very dangerous. But I'm like, A, they have the power to deplatform this president, and B, they didn't do it before. They could have done this before, which means a lot of danger could have been saved. Like for example, those riots and all that, all the instigation, the way he used Twitter to
Right.
instigate his fan base to do violence, right? So that Trump suspension itself is like such an epitome of how much power they hold. It's like if someone doesn't agree with them, they're out. They
Yeah.
can put you out of business in that sense.
That is true, but with a lot of terms and conditions. And
Sure.
the problem is that they have their rules. They have
Mm.
rules for usage. They have their clear guidelines that we must attest to when we use the service. Trump was, of course, flouting those guidelines, and so he was suspended. The problem comes with the fact that Trump was doing that before as well. It's
Mm.
only when they were certain that he's getting out of the White House a week or 10 days before that, it was just safe to deplatform him. Also, there have been similar instances across the world,
Sure.
and many more instances across the world, from political leaders to individuals to all kinds of people, even some people with military or terrorist powers
Terrorist, yeah.
in their hands. So they pay various instances, and every instance has to be taken in its context, its geography, and its political influence.
Mm.
But and which is why it's a debate for everyone. But they chose not. But they chose not to put their efforts there and just deplatform him because it was just 2 weeks before he was moving out of White House anyway. They did not do anything before. So this kind of became a safe position for them to take. Also, since they are based in US and they are a US company, would it matter if US was in a military conflict with like say Iraq in the 90s,
Mm.
and would they deplatform Saddam Hussein? And I'm just imagining 90s having Twitter or something.
Sure.
So would the political influence interpret what their guidelines suggest, because that is where the problem is. It's
Mm.
fair to have guidelines. And when I sign up, I agree to those guidelines of your platform, and I'm happy to adhere to them. But the problem is when the guidelines are flouted, and they're flouted across the globe with people of all kinds of people in all kinds of domains and people of all kinds of political ideology. But it so happens that the rules and the guidelines are enforced only on certain people.
Uh,
And we've seen that in India. We've seen how Facebook has allowed right-wing propaganda to peddle
if
very comfortably, and there have been Wall Street Journal reports, so we should not really dispute that anymore. But we've seen a lot of people on the other side being barred or banned, or their accounts being suspended and things like that. So the fair application of those guidelines, the fair enforcement is missing, and that's like law, because
yeah.
in a lot of countries, especially in third world countries and emerging countries like India, we've always believed that the law is not enforced in uniformly.
Sure.
And that is what the tech companies are doing. But in that case, you have a government, you have a judiciary where you can appeal and you can do a lot of things. But in this case, there's nothing. You have a customer support number perhaps to just rant about it.
One more thing is basically what this goes to show is that tech companies, like human beings, they suck it up to power, right? For example, when the Republicans were in rule, Zuckerberg was in meetings with Trump and various alt-right group leaders, and Twitter didn't suspend him because obviously it's a Republican government. The day Democrat government came into power, they suspended him. And in India, again, they're peddling the right-wing groups because they are the ones in power, right? So, well, if they curb these folks, that will curb their business. So ultimately, profit is the goal.
Right. See, in the US also, a lot of things happened for Trump was because Trump was an outlier. He
Hmm.
was a weird guy.
Yeah.
He is a weird guy. It's just that we don't see his weird tweets now. He's a weird guy. He was a dangerous guy for democracy. He was the things he did, the way things he spoke were uh, but not the things that a president is expected to speak.
Sure.
He was not keeping the dignity of the position as well, the dignity of the White House. And so it was easy for the world to hate on him.
Hmm.
Anybody outside the Republican or some Hindutva organizations in India, everybody across the world hated Trump. He was clearly a white supremacist. He aided all those groups and organizations. So he was an easy target.
Hmm.
But in India, where Narendra Modi is an elected leader, he's an elected political leader, has a strong fan base, has a strong electoral base. So this kind of thing would never happen in India,
Sure.
and I'm happy it won't happen in India. Uh, a lot of criticism of what Twitter did to Trump, or what Trump has been speaking all this while for his entire presidentship, was because Trump was an outlier. It is
Hmm.
very, I mean, I can't imagine for all the few presidents that I've seen in the US or the leaders in India, I've not seen that kind of rhetoric, that kind of randomness, that kind of weirdness coming from a elected political figure.
Uh-huh.
So Trump was an outlier. It was easy to say he's a stupid guy. But would Twitter say that to any Indian prime minister or chief minister or any Indian leader? I highly doubt that. I highly
Sure.
doubt that.
And again, if they're not gonna disturb the fan base, because if right wing is bringing you
Yeah.
business, they will happily.
Yeah, and the which is what was your point. So
Yeah.
they would always suck up to the power. It was
Sure.
only, and I was that saying that the only thing they didn't do was because of it. It was Trump. They did
Hmm.
not suck up to Trump because it was Trump.
Sure.
And I'm saying most big tech, not Facebook, because Facebook clearly was on a different level,
Sure.
and we've seen all those things happening. But
Right.
broadly, in India, for example, in Punjab, there is Congress government right now.
Hmm.
So the industries and across domains, all industrial leaders, the big the farm, there's a lot of farmer in Punjab, or agriculture leaders or whatever, would suck up to the Amrinder Singh government.
Sure.
But once a different CM comes up, they'll suck up to that government. I mean,
Sure.
that's from a state level to a country, to
Global.
take it to USA, it would
Yeah.
happen everywhere.
Yeah.
And big tech would also do that. Like I said, Trump was an outlier. So what big tech did to him, like Amazon dismissing,
Hmm.
Amazon suspending the server for Parler,
Hmm.
because it was instigating a lot of riot. So
Sure.
all that only happened because this was Trump. It was outlier. What happened at the Capitol Hill was once in a lifetime kind of a incident. So
Yeah.
it was easy to curb that. But
Hmm.
otherwise, I mean, Biden would do 10 wrong things, but big tech won't bother because he's
Sure.
the man in charge.
And this nexus of big tech and the government, right? Is that why awareness for apps like Signal or private browsers is growing right now? Is that why you shifted to Signal basically? What was the problem with WhatsApp? What was the privacy issue that was really the crux of all this debate WhatsApp was bringing up? If you can explain that.
See, there are a couple of things when I talk privacy.
Hmm.
I seem hypocritical when I talk about privacy because otherwise I'm out there on social media.
Sure.
Unlike a lot of people, I often discuss where I am, where I'm traveling, where I'm eating right now.
Hmm.
I put pictures of my kid, he's 3 year old, so I often put up pictures of it and the things we are doing with him. And I know a lot of people, even in my family, who avoid putting pictures of their kid. So I'm pretty much an open book on social media. So when I
Uh,
speak of privacy,
you are doing that. The difference, you're doing that out of your own will, right?
exactly, yeah. So my life is an open book on social media.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's on Twitter also, which is a public account. I mean,
Sure.
it's not just on Facebook where I would have added friends and all that.
Hmm.
It's on Twitter. My Twitter is not protected. Some of it is on Instagram. My Instagram is not protected. But with my consent, what I feel out there on social media. A lot of my political opinion, sometimes very harsh, is out there. And I keep getting screenshots of those back in the argument sometimes, as the troll army does.
Sure.
But all that is with consent, and all that is whatever I choose and however way I want to present it.
Sure.
Maybe I'm faking it. Maybe I'm putting the best picture only and not the one where I look like a weirdo. So I'm choosing my life that I choose to put outside.
Hmm.
However, I do not expect that power to be with any of the tech platforms.
Hmm.
I do not want my contacts to be synced to your platform because I did not allow you to. I do not want my picture gallery to be up in your cloud if I have not allowed that.
Sure.
And I do not want your image processing to work on my images creepily without me knowing it. So the point is, my privacy and any efforts to breach that privacy would be my calling. What big tech does, and not just big tech, even the smallest of the independent dev who just makes up a image editing service or put filters and all this, do not respect my rights and my private information, and that is my problem. So I'm okay with people using my pictures. I used to click a lot of photos when I used to travel, and some people would just pick those up, make wallpapers and things like that, and I would just use it, do it without attribution. I was okay with it because that is not my work. That is not the way I earn my living. However, I do not want somebody else to be processing my information. And AI and a lot of machine learning is very capable. I mean,
Hmm.
with only my data, they can just profile me instantly.
Sure.
And I do not allow big data to do that. So I choose my services, I choose the permissions I give every app very consciously, because there has to be a need. I'm okay with, and I have smart speakers at home. I have smart speakers from Amazon as well as Google. I used to have one from Microsoft. So my data is out there for you, but I should know where it is. And what I do and what I preach others is I visit my account information to see what my data is, delete it periodically, and take care of the permission that I give to every service online or on my phone. So those things I'm very particular about. Why I moved to Signal was, so it was way before the current WhatsApp issue when Signal came. I've not been on WhatsApp since 2019.
Wow.
So one was obviously the annoying bits of WhatsApp. A lot of
Groups.
work started happening, groups, and a lot of work started happening on WhatsApp. And I'm old school. I like my emails.
Hmm.
So one reason was that. But why I moved to Signal and even Telegram I was using
Hmm.
back then was because I did not want my chats to be uh, ever available without my without my consent.
Sure.
So that I'm not doing anything shady. And a lot of people, while debate is, and it's a common principle that I have nothing to hide. But even if you don't have anything to hide, you do not put yourself out to public.
Exactly.
Still, even if you're we're sitting in our rooms right now having this conversation, and it is a fairly civil conversation, but we still have our doors closed. Our lives are not public till we choose to be public.
Yeah.
when,
Even if,
when we,
just because it's not shady doesn't mean I have to make it public. Like, you don't make your underwears
right,
public, for example. Like,
right.
come on.
So my when I talk privacy, I treat a middle path. And when I advise people on privacy, I ask them to be conscious of what they're sharing.
Sure.
If that is what they want to share, it's okay, it's free will, do whatever you want. But you need to be aware what this where this data is going. You also what are the callbacks if you want to cancel that data, delete that data
Hmm.
with the Google, with the Microsoft, or with Apple or whatever. So that bit of privacy. So while I share a lot of information, I just want to be conscious of what I share,
Sure.
and I share only with brands, companies who I trust. So obviously, all companies have sometimes deceived me, uh, either by breaches or by some service where they accidentally, the usual word is accidentally, once a news report comes in that this service is sharing your data with that service, the corporation would come up with the statement that this was accidentally and we're fixing it. So there
Sure.
have been those accidents where I've been deceived. But still, these are big tech companies. I trust them that they'll clean up their act, which is why I want regulation and policy in place to take care of that. Which is why the lack of data privacy laws in India is my biggest problem.
How long until this backdoor privacy policy is breached, right? For example, there was this shooter incident in US. The government was asking Apple to unlock the chats of the shooter, but
Right.
the Apple didn't agree to do it. Where do you stand on that? And is it only a matter of time? Even I stand on the fact that the backdoor should not be given. But how long will this stay, right? It's a tug of war between the government and the tech companies. Who's gonna,
Uh,
bend?
see that's a very tricky debate to have.
Sure.
And this was an isolated shooting incident.
Hmm.
What if this was about a terrorist plan being uh, made, or an activity being done
Uh-huh.
on in any country outside of the US?
Sure.
Would the social media platform or the hardware device maker or the platform owner allow the government the access to information? Public interest would say yes, because everybody would want to nab the criminals. And an analogy can be made in the real world. So real world has warrants to search your room. Real world
Exactly.
has warrants to enter your rooms, confiscate your devices, and then those are sent to forensics, and a lot of things are extracted out of it.
Sure.
Sometimes very crucial evidence and sometimes very crucial intelligence information is gathered through devices confiscated from uh, small pawns in a big terrorist activity. And public interest would say that is allowed. However, uh, we are at a stage in technology where tech any counter tech or any aggressive tech in the hands of lawmakers, in terms of police authorities, would also mean doomsday. Imagine in India where you have such technology available for with every police station in India. That would be very terrible, because data privacy is missing here. Human rights are at an all-time low anyway. And I'll tell you a frank example. I know a policeman, and a senior officer. He's probably SP now, but I've known him since he was a lowly ranked officer. So they police stations have this where they track the number of a phone, where that phone is, and you need a proper process to track somebody's phone.
Hmm.
So if I commit a crime, and I don't know the legal process, but a magistrate or whatever, if there is an FIR under my name, and I need to be tracked where my coordinates are, the police would kind of, they have this software or whatever setup they have, they'll
Sure.
track my number and it will come that I am in this market in Gurgaon, and then they'll send a party to arrest me.
Hmm.
However, that thing is used by so many people, so many police folks, for just tracking anybody, even family members, friends,
Oof. Stalking.
and regular stalking, or just helping people. Oh, this guy is not receiving my money, and he says he's in Bangalore. Can you check if he's in Bangalore or Gurgaon? Oh, of course, I have a police friend. He'll tell me that. So because of the absence of data privacy laws, and not just laws, just the casual attitude about privacy,
Hmm.
everybody in India takes mobile phone numbers very casually. It's plastered everywhere. We have a huge spam problem. So that bit is a problem. You need to counter what information goes from you to anybody outside, and if everybody has that power, that becomes a problem. So backdoor into tech, into a platform, is very tricky. If it's easy to say in the wrong hands, but on that case, probably the police was right hands. But would they be right hands everywhere when they're curbing dissent? When they are at a protest where they are being targeted? In George Floyd's case, was police doing the right thing? No, we know that. So they police also has its bad days, and across
Sure.
the globe, not just in US or India, across the globe.
Sure.
Even in conflict areas like Kashmir or Northeast, we've had issues with armed forces as well.
Hmm.
So such tech backdoors create a problem then. Uh, Now, ideally, you would imagine that the court would take care, just send the phone to Apple and they'll unlock it and extract you the information, give it to you. But that obviously can't be scaled to a global level. Maybe
Sure.
once in a while, a war, a 9/11 or things like that. But otherwise, uh, but that is what India is trying now.
Hmm.
The recent conversation around, if we ask you to suspend something or delete something from your platform, you do it in 24 hours, was a step towards that. Why would the
Wow.
government govern what's happening on a Twitter or a Facebook or a Instagram or whatever? So that bit is a bit problematic. TikTok has that issues in China.
Hmm.
I don't know how that's working out,
Hmm.
but a lot of Chinese any posts and TikTok videos that were countering Chinese propaganda or exposing the conditions of Uyghur Muslims there
Sure.
were being brought down. So
Sure.
it's China has a reputation for doing that. It's not a model that India should have followed,
Yeah.
but that is where we are going. We're going towards China in curbing freedom of speech minus the development. So
Yeah.
it's a wrong thing that we're following. I mean, everybody wants to be a manufacturing hub and have a
Hmm.
great economy like China, but instead of that, the curbing of human rights and dissent and curbing freedom of speech is where we're going,
Sure.
mimicking China, which is not an
and
ideal.
and the public is fooled in the name of security, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's for your own security, we have to breach your
That's what I
privacy.
said. So
Yeah,
it's
it's like,
public interest then.
yeah, it's like, what's the best way to avoid crime throughout the country? Just have a CCTV inside every house. But is that the right thing to do? No, right? So that's a very thin line. And one more topic that I wanted to bring up is this idea of algorithms reading your personality from the social media, right? For example, based on the pages that you like, based on the posts that you do, based on the pages that you follow, and so on. Ever since I heard about it, I started randomly following right wing pages as well, just for fun. Like, I have a Muslim name, and I follow anti Muslim pages and vegetarian pages. I'm like, why should the social media know where I stand, right? Why should Facebook know? And even on Twitter, I just follow the most racist, most bigoted accounts on social media. People would look at the people that I follow and they might cancel me. You know what I mean? But I have different thing here. Like, why should people know derive opinion from what I follow and what I like, right? So this is an indirect breach of privacy, if you can, right? You're basically breaching your personality, which you don't want to reveal to everyone unless if it's
Right.
someone close or someone who's a friend or a loved one or something like that, right?
Yeah. See, I have very strong views on that. I
Sure.
hate algorithms.
Mm.
As a computer science graduate, as somebody who has worked in tech, writes on tech, and spends his entire day on tech, uh, I know algorithms are the core of everything.
Sure.
But I hate algorithms mapping the information I consume, and I articulated that in a Twitter thread sometime back. And
Mm.
so happened I was setting up my mother's phone, and and it was a new phone, so we were installing news apps, and she accidentally moved to a -1 screen, which on Android phone is a Google Discover feed where it
Sure.
throws up news and all. And a lot of browsers also have that built in, where you fire the browser and there are news items from all the publishers that they partner with.
Hmm.
And I told mom to turn it off, and it was turned off on a previous phone as well. And she asked why this might be handy. I said always consume news, always go to the news, don't let news come to you. And I just said that, and I explained her how a lot of junk stuff that you get on WhatsApp, and she's fairly comfortable with kind of separating wheat from the chaff, and
Mm.
she's the one who understand that there's a lot of fake news out there. But that conversation finished, and I was then articulating that on Twitter. I said, make a mission and educate everyone, because we are technically savvy people, so we can have brighter sense to it.
Mm.
We are more aware. We also use those controls to hide this kind of news or train the algorithms and interest to our comfort level. But not everybody does that. And because such misinformation, propaganda, and fake news is the order of the day, I've made it a principle to tell everyone that go and consume news, go and consume information rather than have algorithms serve it to you. Uh,
Sure.
in one case, of course, what some WhatsApp group sending you information might just be misinformation or fake news or just bad information out of context or something like that. So
Hmm.
that obviously you should be looking at. And second is, even if it is coming from a Times of India or a Hindustan Times or an Indian Express, and I'm saying broad newspapers, not with this bias or that bias,
Sure.
whatever the leading newspapers are, if you see a TOI logo, you would see that this might not be a misinformation,
Yeah.
although it's hard to say these days. But you will read that link, and like you said, it would customize the further news delivery to you based on what you've read, uh, and that is where you'll be missing information, what you should be reading, and obviously feeding into that circle jerk of similar information, which is like a goldfish in a bucket. And so my advice to everyone is find out whatever app or service or newspaper or magazine works for you and read that out. So if I'm an NDTV fan or a BBC reader or even a Times of India or Economic Times, I should go to the browser, type economictimes.com, and then read Economic Times.
Yeah.
One, I because I have faith in Economic Times, I think they have got good credentials. So I've made my mind that Economic Times serve me good information. So I'm reading what I want right there. I'm not seeking information from random, because same information might just come from a different business newspaper, from Mint on my feed, and probably Mint is not right, or I don't like Mint. But because I click that, and further Mint links would keep coming, and I'll start consuming information on a website that I don't like.
Yeah.
My preference was Economic Times, but because once I read Mint, that would be generated out of my interest. So I make it a point to tell anybody, and mostly it's either young people or the seniors in my family and
Hmm.
friends, that I go and consume information.
Sure.
I don't watch a lot of news channels or read a lot of websites because I know they are not right.
Hmm.
But even if your preference is as bad as a channel as Z News, turn it on and just watch it. Don't have a edited clip from Z News
Come to you
show
in a
or
WhatsApp.
whatever
Yeah.
come to you on a WhatsApp, because you're missing the context. You're missing. I'm sorry if you watch Z News, and that's your prerogative, but always go to the information, not and even how platforms deliver. So Twitter has this latest tweets or a choice between top tweets, and
Sure.
I always switch to latest tweets.
Hmm.
Instagram, when they started programming and show you more relevant photos, I've lost track of what Instagram does. So
Hmm.
sometimes I'm not able to find photos that I want to see because they're out of interest, or howsoever they kind of figure that out.
Sure.
So don't let, and it's not even they're feeding wrong information or they're mapping me, and that's a different debate altogether. Why should my information flow be controlled by you? It's like you go to a library and the librarian gives you, this is the book you should read, and go read it. While the idea of library is you look at different shelves, you
Yeah.
see that I'm interested in nonfiction and pick up a book and read that.
Yeah. The idea of accidentally stumbling upon something is kind of getting killed in the internet world right now. And I've been using internet for like 14, 15 years, right? And I remember the randomness of internet that was there back in the day, and now it is being killed. And people, and this is all because of algorithms, and people don't understand that the ultimate profit of a social media company is to make you spend time on its app, right?
Yeah.
Make you spend time on WhatsApp, make you click more so that it can generate more ad revenue. And how will it, what is the best thing it can do to make you spend time on its app is give the information that will make you spend time on this app, right? Glue your eyeballs. That's the whole point, right?
Right.
So
Right.
it is in its best interest to supply information after information that you need. And you fall into that, and you fall into this bubble, and you don't know what's outside it. And that is how, there are little pocket universes in our social media space as well, right? There is the right wing media space, the left wing, and all that. And if I don't know, if I was growing up in today's time, I would have been in this orthodox Muslim family social media space. I would have never gotten out of it. I would have never gotten to know about LGBTQT rights and all that, right? It's because I stumbled upon these randomly back in the day, I could have a fair understanding of the other things as well. So that, do you think it's getting killed now?
Uh, no, so what I do is it certainly is better than when we had no internet. Uh, my experiences in school were very limited because I was only looking at the world
Sure.
from what I saw in the family and what was in my school.
Mm, mm,
In fact, a lot of caste issues have never surfaced for me because in a lot of sense I come from a privileged background, so I did not see a lot of sufferings or the misfortune
same.
that happens in the society.
Sure.
I did not have any Muslims in my class, and my school was a very religious school, so we had very religious prayers and all that. So I never looked at the other side. My
Mm,
experiences were very limited,
mm,
and from a decent economic strata, my father was a doctor. I did not look above or below us because that is the world we moved in.
sure.
Our family friends were all doctors, and that is a small bubble that we lived in.
Yeah.
So it became better with internet. And I
Sure.
buy your point about the serendipity that was of probably till the mids of 2000.
Mm,
But what I do now is what I make up with because like I said, I do not want curated information from the platform players. What I do now is I take that serendipity from my curation of my social media.
okay.
So I find and follow good people that I assume would share good information.
Mm,
So you mentioned LGBTQ. So I follow a lot of people who are either from the community or speak about their rights
same.
or have books written about them.
Mm,
Same is with a lot of caste activists.
exactly.
Economics. I'm dumb at economics. I do not understand a lot of it, but I follow a few journalists or writers or columnists in my space, and I assume that they will share good links that I will click on.
Sure.
Uh, I understand they share a lot of links. Some of them always go to my reading list, but I never go back to them. They're just open tabs on my computer.
Same.
But my information curation is based on the people I follow,
Mm,
and that's a good thing about Twitter. But uh, what the key here is curation.
mm,
If you follow people within your circle, you're only looking at again, then you'll fall into the same thing which I was in my school, where you're looking at the world only with things that are around you. So
yeah.
broaden your perspective. Because I was in tech, I started with adopting social media very early. And I started following most people outside of India because Twitter was very new in India. I mean, I
Sure.
was one of the few early users in India. So
Sure.
my perspective of tech was kind of made and carved by people opining about it outside of India,
Mm,
and so that gave me a lot of perspective, and that curation kind of helps me. And since then, I've anything that I want to know or learn more is I invest about on my social media curation,
mm,
people I follow, and I'm very particular about who I follow and who I don't follow. I don't follow some of my friends who are good friends in real life. I don't follow them because they're not sharing something worthy on Twitter. And this is Twitter. Facebook, anybody's a friend and it's okay.
mm.
And I'm not very active there anyway. On Instagram and Twitter, I'm very particular. I'm very good friends with some people, but I don't follow them on either platforms because I want my information to be curated very well.
That I do. I follow the right people, obviously, and that is one thing that I tell people who are kind of completely logging off social media. Right? Some people are like, "I'm done with social
Yeah,
media," and they're going out. I'm like, I hope you're not missing good information, right?
yeah.
Because if you really follow right people, social media can be really helpful. And there is no way I could find you and get you on this podcast if not for, I would have not written some letter to your address, right? So that part is what people miss, and they look at the negative side and they log off, which is again mostly people whose life is not affected by the events that they are
Yeah,
missing out
of
on, right?
course, of
So
course.
that is there.
If somebody has to log off, they need to log off from WhatsApp. I mean,
Yeah,
it's easier to log off WhatsApp, and I'm a case study of it. 2019,
sure.
I've not missed it a beat.
Mm,
A lot of people tell me, how do you stay updated? There is SMS when people want to reach me, and of course the Signal. Now it's
mm,
still popular. When in 2019 there were only very few people on
mm,
Signal who would
mm,
ping me, especially in India.
sure.
But I don't miss too many things. Yes, I sometimes miss of family members sharing photos of where they are dining, but that's okay. we can live with. There is a lot of fear of missing out, but I think I'm happy missing out on a lot of information overload. The
Right.
phone pinging all the time.
Right.
I'm on Twitter 24/7. Yet I'm saying that we can still miss a lot of information.
Mm.
And if you have to disconnect from something, disconnect from all those groups. If not WhatsApp, at least all those groups. And I'm not saying this just for the lies and misinformation and propaganda that goes in. But anyway, why do you need to consume all that information? Rather spend time on Twitter or whatever your platform is and find a good link to read, gain
Right.
information.
Right. What do you think can the government do about this social media algorithm conundrum? Right. For example, like, see, social media ultimately wants more users, more eyeballs, right? So it will do anything in its power to keep those eyeballs glued to its screen, right? So, for
Yeah.
example, if there's a right winger, it will feed him the right wing content to keep him there, no matter how racist or bigoted that content is. And
Right.
same with someone who's following something like, Black Lives Matter, for example, which is a good movement. But the social media company doesn't care if Black Lives Matter or white supremacy, right? For him,
Yeah.
if Black Lives Matter wants to stay on this app, I'll give him that content. If he wants the white supremacist to stay on the app, he will give him that content, because
They are in the
ultimately,
business of
yeah.
serving you confirmation
Exactly.
bias.
Ultimately, Surf Excel is used by both of them, and Surf Excel wants to advertise on my platform. So that
Right.
is their point, isn't it? So what can you possibly do about it?
See, I have very little hopes from anything happening in India, and
Mm.
I'm not saying this reflective of how
Globally
the
as well.
government of India will.
Sure.
No, but I have some hopes in Europe.
Hmm.
They've shown the way in privacy with GDPR, uh, and and it's a cultural thing. Indians are not very bent upon privacy. They don't understand culturally. Privacy is almost non-existent in India, and mm, as one of the lines in the series Family Man was, privacy is a myth, just like democracy. So we are culturally like that. Nobody bats an eyelid sharing their personal numbers. In the US, you still have people only calling you on the office landline because they
Mm.
can't intrude your personal space. Doesn't happen in India. So because it's culturally not there, I don't expect anybody to act upon it because many people are not uh, do not have an issue with it. In Europe, one they have their privacy laws stronger, and also they make a lot of policy around how kids grow up, whether it's what ketchup they are served in restaurants. Was there France or some country which banned the tomato ketchup because it was not healthy and
Uh-huh.
something like that.
Okay.
So they're very particular about that. What happens in schools, what books are taught, what books are not taught. So they take care of what's fed into the kids and the teens. And because the teens are the biggest market for social media platform, I think their governance, their policy framework would help and set the way for entire world to follow,
Sure.
be it things like lack of the disabling of autoplay on YouTube videos or whatever.
Mm.
Even with YouTube Kids, there have been some rulings in Europe where,
Mm.
and Google has happily obliged to kind of make it a better app for only kids.
Sure.
But those kind of, because screen time is a problem. It's a problem globally,
Yep.
but it's a problem that's recognized only in Europe.
Mm.
So I expect their policymakers, they have a good non-profit ecosystem, which kind of affects the policy making. So I expect something to happen there. I expect, or I really want something to happen there, because with GDPR they showed the way for privacy.
Sure.
But US, because even their policy making is lobbied by the big
Yep.
tech. It's very hard. All you'll get will be a Senate hearing where there'll be nice lines spoken which will go viral, but nothing would come out of it.
Yep.
Uh, and India, I really don't have. In India, even the past governments and now this government would only have problems if the platforms would not allow them to leverage the data they have, the information they have on the users.
Sure.
As long as the platform providers serve them happily, they are happy with that.
Exactly.
And till people recognize their privacy, till there are data privacy laws, I don't think Indian government moving anything. Their agenda, you mentioned the confirmation bias. They want the confirmation bias to suit their agenda. So
Mm.
as long as Facebook is allowing right wing to thrive, they're okay with it.
Yeah.
Come a different government. they allow the other ideology to thrive, they're okay with it. Because at the end of the day, advertising works both ways.
Exactly. And also, one thing people should not forget is they are leaving crumbs of personal information on the platforms, right? Via the maps, via the places that they check in, via the food that they are eating. So you may be eating some food, then tomorrow you'll get the ad related to that food, right? Hey, if hey,
Sure.
you are in this area, you had here are the restaurants that you might like it. So these media, social media companies are also getting to know your personalities, right? So what can people do about that? Because I have totally stopped broadcasting my life in that sense, right? If I go out to a movie, I don't put that out on a story, right? I'm like I'm broadcasting nothing about my life unless I have to show off something or unless I have to promote my podcast. So is that the way people should adapt, and people should become a little more conscious of what parts of their personality are they letting the social media companies read in that sense?
See a middle path to that,
Sure.
because it's very attractive to play along on social media, post what you're eating, where you're going,
Yeah.
or all the travel pictures that you put, because it's very attractive. So I'm assuming most people would be happily doing that, and
Sure.
I do a lot of it as well.
Sure.
But the word that you choose, be conscious of that.
Mm.
Uh, and I don't mean this in any wrong sense, but if you are a young girl in a not so safe town in India, and there are so many unsafe towns in India, you might not want your entire evening to be mapped,
Sure.
because somebody looking at your Instagram knows that you've ended your college and you're moving to this pub, and then you're going for movie, and this you do every day, and so they're mapping you. And I don't want to be alarmist. I mean, stalkers would stalk.
Mm.
Stalkers have stalked pre-internet also.
Sure.
They'll stalk the bike that you are riding.
Mm.
So they'll do all that.
Yeah.
You should not make it very easy for them.
Sure.
And I inadvertently just mentioned an example of a young girl in a unsafe town, but it goes all along. I mean, my kid starts school next month.
Mm.
I'm not sure if it will be physical classes, but when that happens, would I want to track everything of him? I do get a lot of nonsense from a lot of trolls, but do I want my kid to be anywhere remotely be harmed? No, I don't want that. So
Okay,
I'll
so
be kind
you
of
will
safe.
not, you will not put out the story like, "Hey, my kid is going this is school and with a location." You won't do that, obviously.
I will not do that. Yeah.
Sure. Sure.
Uh, patterns that I pick. If I'm a guy, I'm picking this woman every day at 6 p.m. and then we
Mm.
go here. Patterns of your life. So what machine learning and AI is doing can also be done by a stalker and a person
Sure.
with wrong interests.
Sure.
Same with financial information, and these and things like even ordering your food. A lot of apps and services can survive without a lot of permissions on your phone.
Yeah.
Why do you and syncing all your contacts, reading all your texts? Just because an app offers you a convenient way to enter the OTP, you give
Yeah.
access to your SMS, and then they're reading all the transactions you're doing, and so they built a financial profile for you, that this guy spends 20,000 on food every month,
Yeah.
so he must be an above average salary earner. So those kind of things I think we can avoid. It is imperative for us to be aware of that and demand that, and
Sure.
then it is the responsibility of tech companies, online service providers, to respect that.
Sure.
uh, some of them do that. Some apps ask for X permission. I deny that X permission, and they still work fine, except
Mm.
for a little functionality that would have come from that permission.
Yeah.
But some apps that don't just work without giving
Exactly.
all the
Some
permission.
apps are like, I want to read your contacts. Otherwise,
Uh,
will not function this app.
even
That's
even our prime minister's app, which is a very bad example. For the prime minister does not need information for every user. He has it anyway. So that's a poor app made. When permissions of the Narendra Modi app are seen,
mm,
it's a
mm.
poor reflection of how the app culture is in India.
And
And
then
because
yeah,
you like the prime minister, you've downloaded that, you are ready to give all those permission. And I think
sure.
that's a bad practice.
Sure. And you wonder where, like, how do you get so many SMS? Like when I bought my Nokia 6600 brick phone, right? I call it the brick series 1100. we never used to get so many SMSs, so many, spam emails, Gmail, and you all wonder why there is so much spam on the email, on the mobile numbers. This is why your email is being sold around as a data point. You are the product, right?
Yeah.
And companies are making money out of you, out of the data
And
that
even,
you generate.
out of tech also, you shop at a fancy retail store these days, or have a coffee at a coffee. The cash register guy asks, the cashier asks for your phone number,
Sure.
and often they would say that they can't skip the just give us a dummy number or do something, because
Exactly.
it's mandatory for their system to have a number. And I've often had a fight about that and an argument about that. So they are mapping all of my evening. I ate this, and I don't mind my eating patterns, but that's also my location.
Yeah.
That's also where I'm spending money. I might want to buy a 1 lakh rupee gadget from a store. I don't want to give you my phone number. I don't want it
Exactly.
tracked. So
Exactly.
every time you talk about privacy, the usual counter is, but you are not doing anything shady. Why do you fear?
Hmm.
But we've discussed this before. This is a
Yeah.
fallacy.
Yeah.
This is a
There is
wrong
nothing
argument.
there is nothing shady about my underwear, but I still won't show it. It's that simple,
Right.
right? Yeah. Well, this is a huge topic, sir. And before I let you go, please let me know what can we look forward to in your own podcast, which is String with Abhishek Bakshi.
Yeah, that's right.
So what are
Uh,
we looking forward to in this particular podcast?
so it basically would be conversations around tech and their impact on culture. It's an
Hmm.
intersection of tech, the products that we use, the services that we use, the platforms that we are on, and how they impact the culture.
Hmm.
And these are not stories, but I'll have industry leaders, like the executive of a smartphone company,
Sure.
a TV manufacturer, and talk about what consumers are buying, what they're experiencing, how things are changing in the world of tech. So not exactly talk about products or
Sure.
tech or services, no reviews of sorts, but also conversations with those same people who are making those products.
Hmm.
So instead of having whatever the latest phone is, instead of talking about that phone, talk with the CEO of that company about how those phones are being bought, how that company is pricing that, what is the
Sure.
business of it, and things like that. So
Hmm.
more of tech, business, culture thing. That would be the main interview segment, but I'll also have a monologue of sorts before about the tech I'm working on, or
Hmm.
which might just be usual. This is the gadget I recently bought.
Sure.
This is the phone I'm trying. So that bit of the consumer tech angle is there.
Hmm.
But every episode will have one interview with an
Sure.
industry leader.
So, do you have a date on this? If you can let us know.
It's coming soon. I don't have a date, but it's coming
Right.
soon.
Sure. Sure. And folks, find Abhishek Baxi. I think it's at Abhishek Baxi on Twitter. There's a verified account.
Bakshi Abhishek.
Bakshi
Bakshi
Abhishek
Abhishek.
on Twitter. He has his own website. Folks, follow him. I highly recommend, especially if you are a tech fanboy. Sir, thank you very, very much for your time. It was an absolute pleasure and honor having you on this podcast. Obviously, no conversation is enough about the consequences of tech and all. I hope you would do it on your podcast, but I hope we had a decent conversation, at least for the start, if you may.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. No conversation is enough, but it's important that we keep having these conversations, because the world of tech kind of changes very quickly. It transforms lives very quickly. So it's important that every few episodes you are talking about it, every few articles I am talking about this. So this is a conversation that needs to be done on podcasts, on people's YouTube channels, on WhatsApp groups also. So this is a conversation that is very dear to me, and I talk about it with anybody who's willing to listen.
Awesome. Awesome. That's it from this podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Till we see you next time with another episode. Bye, everyone.